Hello, my name is Mandolin Royal, and today I'm picking up where I left off after my little injury. So this is Pullet Pen. I want to go over a couple of features that are identical over in Rooster Coop. Both of them are about 9 by 13. They're going to get about an equal amount of birds in this space. I'll have that tally after I get through everybody. So I upgraded them all to a 5-gallon drinker for the quantity of birds. I have a can that holds the feed. These stupid feeders, they're Jeff's least favorite, and I don't like them much either, but we're pretty limited on what's locally available, and I do have some other ones on order that are way better. So I'll do a little breakout episode into feeder design, feed types, what works for what, etc., etc. But this puts 14 pounds total on the ground for them, and I do put them into a higher sided pan to help reduce waste, because the lip that they have produces an incredible amount of waste, and this feed is the good stuff, and I don't want to waste it. So both coops got peat moss as the bedding. It smells nice and earthy, and here in several more weeks it's still gonna smell nice and earthy, because this is the biggest difference between peat moss and a lot of other bedding options, is it cancels the odor out. It does not mask it with its own odor. So when you're using pine, you'll get that fresh little pine scent, but it doesn't take long before it starts to stink like chicken. And the peat moss, we need it for soil amendment in all of our garden areas, so we get 2 uses out of it, and that helps me feel a lot better, because it's not the most sustainable thing, but we get a lot of uses out of it, and it helps us a lot. So it's kind of like, you know, pick your poison and find your balance within that. So now that both pens are all set up and ready to go, it's time to get into the barn. I'm going to start with my group and get them weighed and sorted by gender. I'm going to find my 2 favorite boys. They're going to hang with the girls. When I go through Chase's chicks from Recreational Homestead, I'm going to find my 2 favorite boys out of that. They are also going to stick with the girls. All the other boys are moving over to Rooster Coop. Now, since they do have an age difference, I'm going to start with mine, because they're the younger batch. They're coming in here first to get situated and acclimated. So when the new kids arrive, they're going to be a little more unsure, and they're going to rely on those younger ones to show them what's going on in here. And that has worked out successfully for me. And I will say that I will observe an age blend if they are within 2 weeks of age to each other. More than that tends to be too much of a spread depending on your coop situation. So this should all go pretty seamlessly, especially with how similar the temperaments are from batch to batch. So now I'm going to move on, get my data, get them sorted, get them moved in here. So back to work. So because of my little injury, I say little like it's cute, but it's actually pretty wicked. Maybe I'll show you guys. But anyway, so my birds on Friday will be 6 weeks old, and they are overdue to get out of these brooders. And having that setback was really frustrating. But I'm going to start with mine, get them weighed and sorted, and get them moved first. And hopefully, being in here too long by several days now isn't a setback for them. But we'll find out. But let's also go take a peek in with the other ones too. And I'm pretty excited to get them blended into the same pen together to see them side by side. There's not much difference, but there's some difference. And that's pretty neat to see, because I've been working on this flock for 7 generations now, with a couple of side experiments and learning what I can learn. So I want to see what the as-hatched, bigger producer birds are like versus my small batch with really ruthless culling behind it. Because they're coming of age now to where those differences are going to start showing themselves. And I'm really excited to also kind of get that little restart from Chase and keep them in their own separate pen and put them under my parameters and hold them to my standards and see how they do. I'm pretty excited. Now, I'm also going to do a round 2 of the feed trial using just our genetics and 2 different types of feed, because that's the only thing missing in this trial is that comparison of feed type. But it's not fair to do that with separate genetic pools, and I knew that going into this. So just one genetic group, 2 different feeds to collect that data there and see what's different. And based on the consumption I've seen, those numbers are going to be pretty cool. Well, at least for one party. Maybe not so much for the other party. More on that later. But I didn't expect the learning curve because I'm pretty confident in what I do. But the feed change and the feeder design, gosh, that's a whole other can of worms. And I'm going to have to open it up and talk about that. And what works for what situation. Because what you have available and then all those little details that go into it, you have to adapt a little bit to what your own situation is versus what the birds can do versus what's locally available. There's such an incredible amount of variables to all of this, and you're going to have to learn as you go and what works for you, because what works for someone else might not work for you depending on that availability and all those little things that contribute to the overall results. So let's bounce over, see what's shaking with the recreational homestead chicks. So this is one batch from the recreational homestead, and previously when I split them in 2, I didn't really do it by gender, just kind of as I grabbed them. And as I'm looking, I'm kind of taking note of what they look like from here, especially that above view of body width. And that male right there, I want to know what band he is. See if it's one of my historical favorites. That pullet right there, I like how she's shaping up a lot. That one is showing some pretty good width. And I want to see if that width transfers to the undercarriage of the bird as well. There's a lot of promising birds in here, as well as the other pen. So I'm pretty excited to get my hands on them. But I still have to do mine first. Ooh, that pullet right there. Ooh, and look at the tail spread. When they line up like that and you can start seeing that opening of the tail, that is great to see. And one cool thing, this is different than every other batch I've tried from someone else. I haven't seen any slipwing. And slipwing is so riddled in the American breast flocks because people don't know what it is. They don't know they're supposed to be calling for it. It's a recessive trait. It's complicated. As I get through more of the learning, I'm going to have more videos detailing out what to watch out for, what to call for, all that nerdy stuff. But I'll tell you what, this is the best batch of birds I've grown from someone else since I got my original birds that were actually pretty wonky. But I've been working with them and they're getting a lot better. But these, as expected, with some standouts. And that's the first time I've been able to say that. I can't in good conscience name off the farms I've tried. But if you've been around this breed long enough, you might know who I'm talking about already. Alright, I gotta stop staring at chickens and get my hands on them and do the deal. Because doing the work of breeding selection, monitoring their growth, that all pays off in the long run. I promise. It gets better. It gets easier. You just have to do the work of it. And I'm sorry, but that's what purebred breeding is. If you want the easy route, perhaps keep doing the hybrid hatchery route and rely on someone else to supply the birds. Because if you want to be your own supplier of birds, you absolutely need to figure out how to do that and how to do the work of it. So, moving on. Alright, I confidently grabbed everyone who seems to be female at just past the week 6 date for the group of our genetics. Now, I did have to make some amendments based on what happened with my injury. So instead of an even 6 weeks, we're at 46 days. And instead of the 36 pounds of feed they got to when I planned to weigh them, they're now at 40 pounds of feed for those extra couple of days added on to that week. So female weights coming up on 7 weeks, 28 ounces. But she had pale feet. Gosh, that's the story of my life. But this tote is now full of females. I'm pretty sure that's all of them. So I'm going to go ahead and take them over to Pullet Pen, put them in, do the boys, and they were all as expected, except for the monster with the pale feet. So we'll see how that one continues to develop, but in looking at these weights, which are ounces, I haven't converted them over to grams yet, but it's a pretty tight window. The smallest, 22, but not bad. Alright, let me get them moved, and then we'll switch over to the boys. We'll figure out who the two favorites are there. Because I really like being harder on the males than the females, because you only need one male for every how many hens? It depends. Because if you're pair hatching, it's 1 to 1. If you're clan hatching, well, a male can cover up to 10, 12 females. More if he's really, really good. So, even though I know the females carry forward the flushing, the growth rate, the body type, so I'm pretty interested to see how this pale-legged one turns out, as well as S24 with that kind of weight, S19, S13, S16. We'll see how they turn out. But I'm going to be harder on the boys, because I don't have to have so many of them as I do for the females. Being picky on the females will do you the most favors. But the extra females, they're also going to make breakfast. And the boys don't even have a hope for doing that. So, at the end of the day, it's balance, it's subjective, it's nuanced. We'll see how it shakes out, because at 46 days old, this is by no means what the adult chicken is going to be. But as you have your flock goals, and as you go through what system you're going to use, and as you find what works for you, you're going to figure out in time what you have to do and when, what you need to select for within any particular given season, because it changes season to season. But that's actually pretty good. Alright, let me get them set up and then move on to the boys from our group. Alright, I got walked over here to Pullet Pen, and they're in no hurry to go anywhere, so I'm going to help them. And I'm going to see how Muffin reacts to me pulling them out of the tote, because her instincts are not motherly. They're definitely predatory. And we're working on training. So, as you can see, I absolutely could not fit another bird in here for this walk. We'll just get one. Oh, that feel. This feel is what it's all about. It's nice. Muffin, get out. One chicken. Just reach in and grab another. Now, see how this bird is pausing and kind of taking a note of the surroundings? They get more confident with the more birds I add. And it's like every time they get somewhere new, they have to poop. It never fails. Oh, that's nice heft. Get down there. Muffin, remember what we talked about. No chickens. Reach in, grab another. Oh, every time you handle them, you learn something. You figure out what you're feeling, what it all means. Oh, this is that heavy one. Gosh dang. But look at that foot color. Choices. She'll dress out good. That one feels pretty good. Really, I had no complaints over how any of these felt. Muffin, you still coping? All right. Just remember, my chickens, not yours. Restraint. Be a proud little dog. You got this. You don't have to have them. That one's finding the feeder. The rest of them are super impressed with how much space they're getting. And that's why I put the younger ones in first. They're gonna goof off, they're gonna fly around, they're gonna get to know the place. And then when I add the other ones, they're gonna follow their lead. Anyone sneak out? Just that one. Good job, Muffin. All right. First load of girls in here, and look at the open space. You want them well spaced. It solves so many problems, and it's best to err on the side of too much space rather than too little. Because if you have not enough space, you're gonna have nothing but problems. All right, now to the boys from our group. So I'm pretty confident that I have nothing but boys left in these two brooders, and I'm now on a mission to find my favorite two out of this group. And that'll wrap it up for the birds from my contribution to the feed trial. And based on what time it is, I have to go to work soon. So I'll probably do a part 3 of the injury edition. And then I'll do chases from Recreational Homestead for the next video. Because, I mean, today was a lot of chicken chores that were delayed. And I'm playing catch up. But we'll get through it all. We'll see where we stand. And we'll get everybody where they need to go. So, now for the boys from my group. And as you can see, based on this guy, you see how that comb had jumped up? Well, pretty much everybody in here. It's pretty obvious who's a boy and who's a female. And by indicating gender with their ID number, that lets me know without a shadow of a doubt if I see late developing males. And those, to me, are an automatic call. I want to see my boys proud and obvious as early as possible, and by selecting them that way, it's going to persist that way. Because I'm not crazy about vent sexing, and there's no other way to figure out who's who any earlier than their development shows you, unless you're willing to get a little bit invasive. Boys will be boys. I like how quickly they settle their little play fights. I wonder which tag number that one is. Who wants to go around and challenge everybody? See how he's more developed than the other? The other is still standing his ground. But it was the more developed chick that won that. Whoever walks away first, that's kind of a indicator of who the submissive bird is. And even though it's the more developed one that walked away first, and then a second time, he's still out there trolling. And asking anyone if they have questions. They're so cute at this age. this one was giving me questions, but the wattle development on the underside of the chin lets me know that's a slower developing male, not a girl. All right, time to get hands on, see what these guys are doing. So let me explain some nuance. I went ahead and I grabbed 2 males out because I already knew I didn't need them. And I was visually comparing them to the others in here, which was just 5. And the least amount you have to look at, the easier it is. I will say that. And what has been a little bit striking is that little sassy one is that little guy right there. He's the one that's been running around trying to rule the roost and trying to be Mr. Badass. There's a difference in leg length, and there's especially a difference in leg color, because the biggest one, just like that bigger pullet, has those pale feet. So of the 2 I pulled out that I knew I wouldn't need, their weights pale in contrast to the pullet weights. And your males should always weigh more. So here's the 2 that I knew right off the bat we're not going to need them. So they're already going to get that dinner designation based off of what I'm seeing and how they presented themselves to be. This little spunky one, we'll find out here in a second how meaty he feels. And then I have to get through the bottom brooder as well. Man, he's fast. Small but mighty. Has vigor. Make a note of who is like that, because those are the ones who can really hack it on their own, and they're going to figure it out just fine. So I'm going to keep going, figure out who the absolute 2 best favorites are, and we'll find out if it's that little spunky one or not. Based on weight, probably not, but weight is not the end-all be-all. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you keep selecting heaviest on top of heaviest on top of heaviest, you're going to breed yourself into a corner real quick within 3 generations. Lots of considerations, lots of variables. Vigor has to be one of them. And see how he ran up on that big one, pecked him and stopped? The fact that he stopped is important. And this is why you should always watch your birds, watch how they're behaving, who's engaging with who and how. It's a lot of little details. That's what I'm hoping to teach, because there is no blanket policy. All right, moving on. I gotta get this done. All right, I've got a tote full of boys and my trusty little dog. See how much more developed the combs are? Some of them are smaller, and they had corresponding wattle development to indicate that they were a male. Because I know there's always questionable ones, especially if you look in this corner here. If you had this bird and that bird to go against, you're going to think female and male. But this one's actually a boy. Just a little one. Can I see your wattles? You can kind of sort of see the little pinkening of wattles in there. The beauty of wing banding is I can confirm all of this later on, but based on the tells, we're going to say boy. They have their 5-gallon drinker. I did position their feeders in front of the future feeders so that they can learn locations. And I do believe in multiple feeding sites to prevent guarding of resources, which will have to be its own video. Now this one felt great, but I found 4 to hold on to, and here in a second we're going to look at those 4 figure out our favorite two. We'll bring the other two over here. Muffin? Still in training. Don't do it. Somebody just pooped because they just got here. Muffin, be easy. Hey. We have bees going on in here. Muffin? For such a little old dog, she's learning so many new tricks. She's got this chicken right by her, but she's more worried about what I have in the tote. Nice. So many dinner opportunities in this pen. There they go, finding the feeder. See how they have to perch on the side of that protective bottom pan? That's what reduces the waste, because even though they're gonna pick it out with their beak, they're still not gonna hit the floor with it. All right, let's take a look at these other four and see if we can narrow that down to two favorites. All right, so here's the weights for the boys. And the ones I pulled to the tote to look further at have a little star indicator. So we have S5 at 30.5 ounces, S15 at 27 3/4, S26 at 32 3/4, and S10 at 27.625. So after this point on, I am not going to refer to this sheet because I know they all expressed weights that were better than the female weights. So I'm going to set this aside and look at them more for their expressed traits and not for their weight. I know they weigh enough to matter. So now, what else do we have to go on? Now when I look down from above in this seated position, they all have body width. And that's great to see. So now we can nitpick a little bit further. I'm going to get my hand underneath this bird and go, gosh, that feels meaty. What's your foot color like? Not too bad. That's blue. Toenail color is right. I can look at the comb. I do need to check for conjoined comb spikes because I don't want that to get stuck in the line. This guy's clear. He's going to have at least 4 really well-defined spikes and maybe a little extra in the front to push him to 5. There's a lot more development needed. We'll find out. Too early to tell on earlobes, but that's that little patch of skin underneath the ear itself. Coloring's coming in good. Flushing's definitely there. Weight's definitely there. This guy gets a pass. I'm not too worried about what his band number is because I have it noted. We'll see who joins him in Pullet Pen. So now, when I'm looking from above and I'm looking at development, I want to go for this one. What's your foot color like? Blue enough to matter. Let me see how your comb's coming in. Hold still, I know. You have vigor. Let me see. Wish it would clear up and focus. His comb's not going to be as decent as the other one. That's going to get a little bit wonky. Oh, he feels so meaty though. I like this one too. Alright, between these two, that little sassy one did not end up in this tote. Oh, this feels better than the other two. What's your foot color like? Paler than the others. Hold still. What's your comb like? Better than the other one. Hey, come back. I didn't get my second look at you yet. After getting through all the other ones, this one feels about average. You're coming out. You're going in. So now we're at 3 of 4. I like the feel of that one a lot better. Let me see. Let me see. Alright, I think you're coming out. These are my 2 favorites. Let's see what band they are, which I can't do with one hand. But I am definitely going to make a note of which 2 boys I stuck with the girls. So let me go ahead and do that. I'll update you, get them where they go. And we're going to move on to a part 3 because I got behind. Alright, the 2 boys that made the cut to end up with the easy life of living with the pullets. That is band number S26 and S15. And we will find out in time if they end up as the genuine best of the batch. Based on feel, based on growth, based on everything we have to consider at this age, including vigor. These 2 boys are the ones that made the cut. So moving on, in our part 3 edition, I'll do this same process with the chicks from Recreational Homestead. That'll give these guys a day to get adjusted so that they can show the ropes to the older birds. So more on this later. Hopefully I don't get hurt again this season, because even though I was only a couple days down, it was still a setback. Alright, more on this later. Feel free to like and subscribe as we go through the season of science and the training of the newest little rescue dog. So more on this later. Muffin, you're doing great. Real quick though, is this just the cutest thing? When my husband built out a new ventilated door for me for this brooder shed slash pullet pen, he cut out an egg, and when I open the door, the egg opens like it's hatching. I love him.